All right, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sydney Diedrich. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Otava. Thank you for attending the Ransomware Defense and Survival webinar brought to you by Otava and Veeam. We have a great speaker today lined up for you. We have Michael Deemer, a Senior Systems Engineer from Veeam Software, as well as myself, the Director of Marketing here. If at any time during the webinar you have a question, please feel free to use the question feature on your screen and we'll address all questions at the end. And with that, I'll go ahead and dive right in. So to kick things off, I want to take a moment to bring to your attention some alarming statistics, which are probably the reason that a lot of us are here today. Ransomware attacks have been skyrocketing in recent years. According to Forbes, in 2021, businesses saw a 50% increase in the number of attacks that they experienced per week. But not only is the incidence of attacks on the rise, the cost of recovering from an attack is also trending upward globally. Specific to the US market, attacks cost US businesses more than $6.9 billion in 2021 alone, and only 43% of businesses feel financially prepared to face an attack this year in 2022. And while no one industry is excluded, verticals like education, government, healthcare, MSPs, and financial services saw the most attacks last year. Hackers know that for these companies, downtime is way more detrimental and they're more likely to get payment quicker or make a bigger impact with an attack. With all of this in mind, the truth is that we as humans tend to belittle the likelihood of an event occurring. We hear about ransomware attacks in the news, we see the headlines, but we never think this will happen to us. Major organizations are coming under attack all over the place, and we go about our business. But many of us, without even bothering to invest in proactive solutions to reduce the risk of an attack. So that's why we're here today. Us here at Otava and our partners at Veeam want to make sure that your business is not the next headline. We're here to help you establish proactive methods that will prevent an attack from throttling your business and keep you online during your most critical times. And together we can boost your level of confidence in your ability to stop an attack. If you can't stop it completely, because let's face it, that no one ever can, we will support you and enable you to feel confident in your ability to recover. And with that, I will hand it off to Michael to talk through and to give us a high-level introduction to ransomware and talk about common infection approaches and how we can recover.
Thank you very much, Sydney. Thank you for the big warm welcome here. So I do want to introduce myself just a little bit. I'm Michael Deemer here from Veeam, and I'll be kind of taking you through the ransomware side. But the very first thing I really want to talk about is how does this malicious software spread, right? Now, a lot of this stuff, at least for the very beginning, some of you guys probably have heard something about it, but we're going to take a really kind of a deep dive at it. Now, how does crypto or malicious software, just really in general, how does that really start to truncate against different organizations and different verticals? Well, it's been by cryptobiology. Basically, it's a very sophisticated word, but ultimately it means that the algorithm or the logic for how it actually spreads and how it actually phones home to like the ransomware servers. And what it does at the end of the day is, whether that's your personal data, your production data, your emails, your Office 365, all the way down to your files and folders, what they do is they encrypt this data, so it's no longer technically legible from the human eyes, and that makes it basically very sensitive, right? So there's nobody that's going to be able to unlock it except for the particular ransomware vector that we have that's kind of already that has encrypted it. And a lot of times this is sensitive data. This is everything that we've been working on, all the way from accounting, all the way down to HR, the day-to-day working stuff. Now, a lot of this, and a lot of times what they do is, they always ask for a way of payment, and I'll get to that here in a little later, but the biggest thing is they're trying to either, one, expose the particular vector, whether that be you, SMB customer, all the way up to enterprise, or just making sure that the amount of downtime, just like Sydney said, it hurts so bad that you're willing to pay the ransomware payment so that way you can get back up and running. And usually this all operates under the assumption that the data that they encrypted is actually valuable. So for instance, if they go after like a very, very small mom and pop shops that really don't care about email, it's probably going to be hard to get a payment out of comparatively to anybody else out there that has running a day-to-day business. Those operational needs, email, things like that are most likely, and I would say very highly likely, that you're going to need to get that data back. Of course, having a backup is here what we're going to be talking about today, but that is exactly what I want to talk about. So here on my next slide, so could you actually give me rights one more time? Let's see if it could advance for me. Let's see. Perfect. Actually, it looks like it's working. All right, so let's talk about some of these infection approaches. Now, a lot of this stuff I would assume you've heard of, or at least heard rumors. Specifically speaking around Trojan or Trojan horses. Basically, this is an infection source, right? They send something through the wall, aka the firewall. You click it, you open it, and surprise, surprise. It's definitely not what you wanted to expect. And what does it start doing? It starts encrypting. Social engineering. This is something that is honestly one of probably the harder vectors to really to get around. You can have the best switches, you can have the best firewalls, you can have the best AV out there, but if they trick your help desk, or they trick like an assistant, hey, saying this is the CEO, I need X, Y, and Z gift cards, I need you to reach out to accounting to move some money around, things like that, and they're in a really sought after email with no typing errors. That's probably one of the harder vectors to do, and we'll get to how we actually start to try to mitigate against some of those vectors. Removable media. This is something like a USB drive. There's actually a study done by a US-based college. I can't reference it exactly, but basically what would happen is they would drop basically a baited USB in public, and they basically tracked it, see how many people would open it. And if I do remember right, it was like over 50% plugged it right in. And obviously there was nothing on it to inject inside of that local machine that they plugged it into, other than just the phone home service, exactly kind of getting the tracking, the balancing, and kind of those statistics. But most people, and that's completely fine. I would say, everybody out there is looking for a quick buck. You never know if it has $1 billion worth of Bitcoin on it. My 2 cents is for that is, if for some reason you do come across a removable media USB drive, whatever that may be, don't plug it directly into your laptop. Put it in a sandbox environment where it can't be touched and aggregated from there. Moving on a little bit to malvertising. This is something that mostly everybody out there has experienced at one point or another. Especially, we're going to be ramping up into holiday season here pretty quickly. It sounds crazy to even say that, but man, has this year went by so fast. So malvertising is going to be one of those huge ones. Hey, the ad looks like it's coming from Amazon or Google, Walmart, whatever that may be. It looks very, very official. You click it, you give it the information, but that second hop to that second website is now actually going to a malware server where you just injected all of your information to, so they have it until that card is stopped. Cool. So let's actually look at what does a malware service looks like at a very holistic site. So it looks like you just got a new feature. The email kind of looks like something like the accordion, right? So you have Anti-Spam Pro, and I would say most people out there, they don't like spam in their mailbox, right? So everything from this particular email looks 100% right? We have the Microsoft Ledger, we have all the particular headlines, everything is spelled from grammarly right? And nothing is like really out of shape. It doesn't look like this is a suspicious email. So you're like, you know what? I love Anti-Spam Pro. Nobody needs that. So we follow the link. Now it's going to ask you for an auth token. This auth token is going to be very, very familiar to you guys. This is going to look like just giving read and write access. Now, if you actually read this, you're giving a lot of access. And the very bottom one is probably the most important one. Read and write access to your email basically at any time. They can access it, they can log in as you, calendar, contacts, the whole thing, right? And then once you press accept, this is what is actually going to happen. You're not going to see like the malware actually getting injected, but let's just say you go to lunch, you come back, and you have a little nice email that looks like this. So you're like, that looks weird. Office just doesn't look right to me. Maybe you close it, reopen it, and you're going to find out that nothing in your email box is legible. Pretty soon after that, you're probably going to have a little bit of a mini heart attack, reach out to help desk, and probably not too soon, you're going to be getting a basically Bitcoin is accepted or some type of actual email that you can read. And this is going to be the hacker reaching out to you, telling you, hey, this is what happened to your email. We encrypted it. You're not going to get this back until you pay X amount of cryptocurrency. Now, back in the days, it used to be, Bitcoin is one of the big ones. Anymore, they're not technically probably asking for a lot of Bitcoin. They're probably asking for a lot of these other unknown names of cryptocurrency, so that way they can honestly just change it into Bitcoin or Ethereum or another one of those more stable coins. So just something to be aware of, that they are going to ask you for some type of cryptocurrency to get that data back. So now, what does the other examples look like of infection? Honestly, this is something that most people have ran into. Flash player, I can't tell you the amount of times that has got people. So a little bit of backstory about myself. I used to be an MSP admin for many, many, many years. And stuff like this that we're seeing here on the screen is something that gets most end users, if they don't know how to be meticulous about what is actually going to get clicked on, what are they giving permissions to, and especially when they're on a corporate domain computer or a workstation, it's very important that we train the staff, right? A lot of these are just some basic examples, but these are all real world examples, exactly what that would come up to them, and next finish, and all of a sudden you're injecting malware into your local site. Now, what is your plan, when these unfortunate events come? Now, I can tell you from experience, the first two in my particular eyes aren't even options. I don't want to pay the ransom. I don't want to give up. Let me give you a little bit of backstory. So paying the ransom in some parts of the world is highly illegal. The government is going to be locking that down. Now, do I see that happening more and more in the future? Honestly, yeah, right? Now, giving up, unless you're closing your doors and you're just done, giving up is honestly not an option. Everybody works for their own business. We're an entity, I guess I should say, and having to make sure that we are on track and not just giving up is huge. Executing the plan is really where we need to lie. Now, executing the plan really comes in a couple different ways. I would say executing a plan, but more importantly, having a plan in place is probably the most important part. The reason being is because I can tell you from experience, I've had many ransomware vectors out there where, hey, it comes at 3 o'clock in the morning, complete sites down, everything's crypto locked, and making sure that your staff understands their duties, their roles, and what we need to do first. And there needs to be some type of a plan in place. It is going to help you, 1, restore a lot quicker, 2, waste a lot less time, and 3, get you guys back up into running in a lot more of a better and a more efficient manner than honestly just everybody running around not exactly knowing what to do. I can tell you, even if you just have a simple plan, that is going to help you guys tremendously. Now, there is some ransom protection tips, and that's one of the big things I want to lead with, right? There's a lot of things that we can do from the local side to the networking side to training staff, that this is really going to come into play. Strong passwords, I think this is honestly something that just is a no-brainer across the board. Using, honestly, just stuff that isn't normal, or don't use key phrases, don't use, things that honestly, so going back to social engineering, just a little bit on passwords, they might look you up on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever and try to understand your dog's name, so that way they can basically get a keylogger and see what's going on. The other big thing that I will always advocate for is MFA, or multi-factor authentication. Most people have that as of today. So think of this as when you go and log into Microsoft.com. It calls your phone. You got to validate it yourself. Once you get validated, you get access. MFA is very, very important, and it also keeps people responsible, right? This one, keeping software up to date, honestly, very, very simple, but honestly, it kind of gets away from people. The reason I think it kind of gets away from people, especially nowadays, is with that big shift where everybody's working from home. We're not on the corporate networks anymore. We're not on the corporate firewalls. We're not on the corporate switches, right? We might RDP into a local site, but for the most part, everything's at home. And sometimes with those, more of the corporate networks, that's exactly what happens, is everything gets pushed out on Monday morning. You get an update, no worries. What I always tell people is, hey, being able to do that is very important. Training your staff is also probably one of the most important things, I will say, entirely, because without training your staff, those are your first line of defense. I can tell you from experience, just sitting down, training with your staff, it doesn't have to be hours a day, just telling them what these particular vectors look like, and kind of have them have more suspicious eyes is really good. Moving on down here, we have a whole bunch of good stuff. But really the last thing I want to touch on is the 32100 or 32110 rule, which I will get into a little bit later, but these are awesome rules. And it's not like Veeam and Otava came up with this rule. This is just a best practice in general for all of the backups that we have out there. Now, again, strong passwords. This is why we do things, right? Because there is brute force attacks, there is keyloggers, there is phishing, right? There's a lot of this man in the middle stuff that happens on these passwords. And making sure that we have a variety of different things that we can use at our advantage is honestly going to be very, very helpful. Making sure at least we have 12 characters. 12 characters anymore is very, very common. Nothing really too crazy with that. The other one is, making sure that we don't include personal information, which I said a little bit earlier. This is the big thing with like keyloggers and phishing is they're going to try to go out and make a database basically for your particular user profile and basically see what we can get and what we can fish from that and just try some brute force attacks on those passwords. A lot of good stuff. So really just don't make your passwords memorable. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but passwords are very, very, very important. All right, multi-factor authentication, I already touched a little bit on this, but really the biggest thing that I want to touch on is making sure that when we're giving access and verification is needed, making sure that it's going to the right cell phone, making sure that it goes to the right party. Don't be sharing passwords or sharing verification codes. This is where things can go really, really awry really quickly. Again, I've seen it all, and being on the other side where you actually have to fix things on the admin or the sysadmin side, it just really shows you a lot of the vulnerabilities that it comes with, like sharing passwords or sharing devices. So making sure that it's a one-to-one relation is very, very good there. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about cyber liability insurance. This is something that honestly has been getting a lot of traction. More and more companies out there are honestly adopting this particular liability insurance. And really the biggest reason is cost of downtime, cost of, having, if you did get hit with ransomware, having an auditor come in there and spend a week or 2 weeks inside of your environment picking it apart. I can tell you from experience, it ain't cheap. Those guys are going to go over your environment with a fine-tooth comb. And those particular audits, they're not very, they're very eye-opening, I guess I would say. There's a lot of things that could have been done, should have been done, or will be done. And those are the guys that are going to find those holes for you. And again, not very cheap. A lot of good stuff. Now, one of the last things I want to talk about, at least in the cyber liability insurance, is if you guys do have that, there is certain rules and certain policies that you have to adhere to make sure that you even get the insurance, period. Kind of going back to that 32110 rule, that is just something that you're going to need to have. Same thing with an offsite backup, maybe an offsite backup at Otava, right? Something that's not on your on-premise, but it's offsite at another data center or colo that you technically don't have, full-blown access to. It's going to be huge. Now, this is kind of what I've been alluding to for a while here, is the 32110 rule. And again, this isn't something that, me and Sydney came up with and we're just brainstorming. No, this is something that has been come up with a long, long time ago in the backup world. It actually was a little shorter than this, to be honest. So the very first rule that was ever made was 321. And we've actually kind of adopted a little bit better. So let me kind of break this down. Let me kind of tell you a little bit more about the strategy. Now, the biggest thing here is 3 different copies of your data, right? So if you have 3 different copies of your data, we need to put that now into 2 different forms of media, whether that's, SSD or NVMe or even tape, something that has different types of media. And the biggest 2, honestly, are some type of spinning disk and tape are most likely the go-tos there. Now, making sure that we have one off-site, right? That is huge. making sure that it's not on-premise and completely accessible, because if that local repository or local production site does get compromised, having something off-site is going to be your save-all for that. The other one is have one offline. And when I want you guys to think of like offline, think of like an Iron Mountain, right? This is something you send your tape to, it's in the vault for X amount of months, years, or days, whatever that may be. And it doesn't matter what happens. Once that tape's ejected from the tape reading device, you're not going to be able to inject it with anything else. It's literally just a tape, just like everything else is. Now, once you pair all that together, at the end of the day, what do you get? You get 0 errors after backup and recovery verification. And backup and recovery verification is basically just a test that we're going to perform to make sure that everything is good. Heartbeat test, ping test, application test. And really, if we pair all that together, that's really what we're going to be able to do and to solidify at the end of the day, because we need to do that. So cool. So zero trust, I think this is probably one of the bigger things out there. Zero trust is not going away anytime soon. This is honestly one of those particular, you're going to get more and more information, and more people are going to adopt these particular policies and enforce these particular controls because they're, a lot of this stuff is app-based, right? Supply chain attacks happen, and this is how we can make sure that we're going to implement zero trust. So that way, even if something happens, social engineering, something like that, that we're going to be able to be protected as the company itself. All right. Other recommendations for just honestly keeping everything safe. I've already kind of touched on training staff, but I honestly think that is probably your biggest defense against particular ransomware, malware, any of those big vectors, because your staff is already on payroll, right? If you could just train their eyes to be a little more frugal and a little more skeptical of emails or particular things going on their computer, it's really going to help. Performing a threat analysis. Think of this as a penetration test. And the reason that you want to do a penetration test is you want to make sure that you find out your own weaknesses before somebody else does. Whether this is local security, whether that's firewall security, physical security, password management, social engineering, making sure that you're really putting your company to the test is huge. In an incident response team, right? Having the right people in play, and I'll say it again and again, is going to make sure that you guys have everything that you need in the right order, so that when things happen, you have somebody to go to. They know how to restore the data. They know what data needs to be restored first. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you're not going to restore your Exchange mailbox first if there's no users to access it, right? And then keeping software up to date. I think this is very common, and that should just kind of be a best practice all the way around. Now, how do we recover? I think this is probably one of the best parts is with Veeam and Otava, we're going to be able to recover very granularly and very fast, depending if that's going to be spinning up in their data center with Cloud Connect and maybe instant VM recovery, or using even their DR side for more long-term archival or long-term virtual machine data that needs to reside in the cloud. Testing and discovering of the latest restore point, right? Making sure that we're testing and aggregating that data. And then honestly, again, kind of following documentations for the incident response team. Again, very keen to making sure that everything is going to be able to come back on time in a timely fashion. Cool. So with all that being said, I really do appreciate it for everybody. Let me ramble here for a little bit. I'm going to turn it back over to one of our Platinum VCSP partners, Sydney, and I'll have her take it from here.
Thanks, Michael. Really appreciate that overview. So to take a step back, I wanted to talk to you guys about when it comes to protecting your business from cyber threats, what is the bare minimum you can do? And realistically, at the end of the day, that is having a backup and disaster recovery strategy in place. But what takes some thought around that is understanding which solution is right for your workload. So distinguishing your ideal recovery point objective is the key here. For mission critical workloads, Otava and Veeam make a great pair with continuous data protection tied to Veeam V11. Our solution brings you RPOs near zero for a fraction of the cost of competitors. And again, while backup and DR are the bare minimum, keep in mind that data protection and business resiliency require a well-rounded solution portfolio. And then that leads me to the fact that at Otava, we exist to help you uncover your business potential. We do this by bringing the best of people and technology together. And our approach is people-centered, which means that you'll always get a live person on the phone, and trust that your solution strategy is expert-driven and not cookie-cutter. We're protection-minded. Security and compliance is at the heart of all of our offerings, and our solutions are purpose-built, which means that we don't believe in one size fits all. And our cloud experts will size the environment according to your needs, so you can have confidence that when you stand up your environment, it will actually meet your needs. And finally, we're potential focused. So your dreams are our dreams, and we are here to empower the possibilities of your business. We do this by offering powerful solutions that take your business further. We have 3 solution areas that are focused on solving the critical challenges that businesses face today, in order to unlock the strategic business outcomes of tomorrow. So we offer a robust portfolio of solutions that solve for multi-cloud infrastructure, business resiliency, and intelligence and insights. And as a protection-minded organization, Otava takes proactive approaches to security and data protection. And our suite of business resiliency services are designed to solve for those security challenges at every layer of your environment. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Otava, I want to take a quick step back and offer a brief history of our evolution. And our journey actually really is 150 years in the making. Our parent company, Schurz Communications, was established as a print media publication in 1872 and has evolved over the years into broadband, and then most recently into cloud solutions in 2018. And Otava is really the cloud arm of Schurz Communications. So we have grown by acquisition 3 times since Schurz investment with us, most recently by acquiring New Cloud Networks, a Platinum Veeam VCSP, who you may have heard of, which really helped Otava to solidify its relationship with Veeam. So we're very proud to work with Veeam today. Just a quick note on our compliances and our awards. Otava really does put compliance first in terms of our business strategy. We are HIPAA, High Trust, SOC 1, 2, and 3, PCI DSS, and ISO 27001 compliant, which really sets us apart from the competition. We are able to serve virtually every area and industry with these compliances. And the proof is in the pudding, right? We have been recognized as a leader in the space with CRN, Best and Brightest Companies to Work For, winner of Detroit, a few different cloud awards there, as well as recognized by the Forrester Wave for hosted private cloud services. So we're very proud of our accolades and awards, and being recognized helped us to support your business better. And with that, I want to thank everyone for joining the webinar today. I hope you learned a lot about ransomware. And most importantly, I hope that you learned that you are not exempt from an attack. Your company will face something like this in the near future, but proactively preparing is what makes all the difference. So next steps, you've heard a lot about Otava, you've heard a lot about Veeam. We want to hear from you, for those of you who are interested in kicking the tires, testing features of our backup and DR service. You can reach out to myself, or you can reach out to learnmore@otava.com. My email is sdiedrich@otava.com, SDIEDRICH@otava.com. So feel free to contact me directly. And with that, I will go ahead and open up the questions in the chat if anyone has any questions. It looks like we've had a few come over. First one is, if I have a file server corrupted with ransomware, is my only option to stand it up in Otava data center? Michael, I'll let you answer that question.
Yeah, of course. So if, let's just say your file server does get corrupted, no, that is not your only option, right? You have a couple different options just as standard with Veeam. Now, especially with Otava and Veeam, we have the Cloud Connect, which is basically their, DR or their data center acting as maybe infrastructure as a service, or we can fail over to another on-premise host or another location. Just depends how you really want to handle that. We can do data manipulation pretty any which way. It just kind of depends where and what you want to restore.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. Next question that's come through. I've heard ransomware can affect more than production. It can also hit backups. Can Otava and Veeam protect that?
Yeah, of course. Especially with, speaking as long as we have a backup, and I think that is the key part here, making sure that, that the pairing is together, right? Veeam is going to be doing the data manipulation of actually taking the backups, moving them, and then Otava is going to be able there to restore them and actually accept them into their data center and do any type of really infrastructure or DR when or if needed.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, one thing that makes Veeam really great is that you can do very granular restores, as Michael was discussing earlier in the webinar, which really helps to isolate those compromised files if they are in your backups. So we know that bots can live on your environment for months undetected and be in the background, and that's how they get in your backups, is that they're sitting in the background and you back up an infected server that they're sitting on, and when you go to restore, you have a compromised file. Well, with Veeam, what you can do is isolate that compromised file to make sure you're only restoring files that are not corrupted. I say that all right, Michael?
Absolutely, 100%. And then Veeam also offers a way to test that, which is called Sure Backup. At the end of the day, it basically has a heartbeat test, a ping test, and an application test. So that way, when you're going back and testing that very granular piece of information, and you want to make sure there is no particular ransomware vector or vertical in there, it's going to make sure it's going to do an AV scan as well and say, hey, this is what we found in the backup. This is what we found in that granular piece of data that you wanted to restore. If there was any ransomware, we can basically just kill the job now and separate it from the local production network, or you can proceed on. Just kind of depends how you want to handle that. We do give you a couple different options.
Awesome. Next question that's come through is, how fast can I spin up a Cloud Connect environment in Otava Data Center? And I can take that one. That really depends on the size of your workload and your bandwidth constraints and different things like that. But we can have you up and running in as little as, but from the time contract signed, 10 hours or 24 hours, depending on the size of the workload. So you'll have to give us a call for those one-off instances there. And then the last question that I see here in the chat is, what sort of resources will it require on site to manage the Cloud Connect transition and upkeep? And I'll leave that to Michael.
Yeah, of course. So when we're sending data to Cloud Connect, it sounds like it's really going to be this hard and it's going to be a lot of configuration. At the end of the day, it's honestly not. Somebody from the Otava team is going to reach out, give you guys some credentials. These credentials you'll put in locally to the Veeam backup and replication server. Just to give you a little bit of insight into resources, at least on the Veeam backup and replication side, 4 cores and 8 gigs of RAM. So not a resource pig by any stretch of the form of the imagination. You take that, you spin up the ISO, you get everything connected, and then you take those information that Sydney and her team sent over, and then that information is then ingested into the local Veeam backup and replication server that sits on site. And then once that's done, we go out, we make an API connection with the Otava and the Otava Cloud Connect server, and that way we can actually now see that repository being available for us. We set up a backup job, and we just start sending data over. So it's very, very easy to get set up. Honestly, it just takes getting the credentials and putting them in the right spot.
Great. And with that, that's all of our questions. Thank you for your time today. And please feel free to reach out to us with any individual questions or interest in getting started today with Otava and Veeam. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.